Hi, kids. What's for dinner?
Hey, welcome back to ScreenCrush. I'm Ryan Airy, and this is everything you need to know before watching Severance Season 2. Lumen Industries, a biotech company, has created a new medical procedure known as Severance. This procedure is a brain implant that separates your consciousness into two, essentially creating an entirely new and additional person within the same brain. At work, this innie is conscious, and at home, the outie is conscious. The two minds are completely separate and know nothing about their alternate selves. So this isn't all that bad for the outie because they never have to experience a day of work. But as for the innie, all they know is their life inside the office. The procedure is super controversial, and the morality of it is often questioned by those on the outside looking in.
And that decision was controversial, ethically, socially, morally, scientifically.
Essentially, imagine that you show up to work every day, the elevator doors close, and then your workday is done. But for the innie, the end of your workday just leads into a new workday. And guys, by the way, we have this great new Severance-inspired parody shirt, Praise Keir, on a post-it note. If you know, you know. So the first season follows Mark S., who has just been promoted to manager of his department, Macro Data Refinement. Mark's promotion comes following the sudden disappearance of his best friend and former manager, Petey.
I'm sorry, Mark. You guys were one of my favorite office friendships.
Mark is accompanied by his co-workers Irving and Dylan, as well as a new hire, Helly, a young woman still acclimating to her new existence. On the outside, Mark S.'s outie, Mark Scout, is still reeling from the loss of his wife who died in a car accident. This tragedy is what pushed Mark to undergo the severance procedure.
Forgetting about her for 8 hours a day isn't the same thing as healing.
On the outside, Mark is encountered by Petey, whom his outer self does not know.
Hi, kids. What's for dinner? Sorry, you don't get that reference.
Back home in his Lumen-sponsored housing, Mark talked with his neighbor, Mrs. Selvig, completely unaware that she's also his boss, Miss Cobell.
You're good people.
So Helly has recently undergone the severance procedure and is starting to settle into her new job, albeit reluctantly. She is introduced to her task as a macro data refiner, where she is to identify scary numbers and remove them from lines of code.
Cat 1 numbers, for example, they'll be sort of disconcerting, scary.
Scary. My job is to scroll through this spreadsheet and look for numbers that are scary.
During Helly's welcome party, being hosted by the charming yet creepy and controlling Mr. Milchick, Helly attempts to write her outie a note explaining her unhappiness.
I don't want to do the file sorting thing, or the never seeing the sun thing, or the disappearing friends thing.
This is when we learn that any type of communication via symbols can be detected and intercepted in the elevators. Now, following Helly's breaking of the rules, she is about to be taken to the break room by Grainer for punishment. Mark intervenes and takes responsibility, resulting in him being the one to go to the break room. There, Mark is forced to read a pre-written apology over and over and over again while connected to a lie detector. Back in the office, we see Irving struggle with staying awake, and he dreams about a black liquid consuming his desk. Following this episode, Irving is sent for a wellness check with Miss Casey. At the wellness center, Irving meets Bert from Optics and Design.
Most people only think of O&D when new handbook totes come in. Well, I love those too.
On the outside, Mark is once again confronted by Petey. Petey has undergone what's known as reintegration, meaning that he has been unsevered and his two selves are now one. This operation is causing him to have severe headaches and confusion. Petey is trying to convince Mark that Lumen is bad news, and he shares with him a recording of Mark's innie in the break room, reciting the apology.
Forgive me for the harm I have caused this world.
The next day, while Mark is at work, we see his sister, Devon, who is pregnant, and his eccentric brother-in-law, Rickon, delivers a copy of his new book.
Against the door or to the side?
I think either's really good.
Cobell intercepts the book and brings it to her office at Lumen to check for hidden messages. Cobell's presence frightens Petey, and he runs away and winds up passing out in a convenience store. Back at the office, Helly has resubmitted a resignation request to her outie, which was quickly denied.
Yeah, no, that can't be right. My outie wouldn't do that.
Helly is distraught following this cold message from her outer self, so Irving recommends taking a field trip to the Perpetuity Wing. There, the history of Lumen and its founder, Keir Egan, are on full display. The hope is that this outing will help Helly understand why she's here, and it doesn't work at all. On his way home from work, Mark sees Petey being taken by ambulance following his collapse. Mark quickly gets home to hide any evidence that Petey had been staying with him. Back at the office, Irving visits Bert in Optics and Design, and the two clearly display feelings for one another. While walking the halls, Irving finds Rickon's book in the conference room, which was accidentally left behind by Milchick during one of Helly's escape attempts. Irving reports this finding to Mark and the gang, and Mark says that he's going to hand it over to the higher-ups, but actually, he keeps the book. Following another failed escape attempt and a grueling number of hours in the break room, Helly threatens to use a paper cutter to cut off her fingers.
Do I look like I'm f***ing around right now?
Her demands are that she be allowed to record a message for her outie, once again requesting resignation. Helly's outie quickly denies this request and threatens Helly right back.
And if you ever do anything to my fingers, know that I will keep you alive long enough to horribly regret that.
Mark learns that Petey has died, and shortly thereafter, Petey's left-behind phone begins to ring. Mark and Mrs. Selvig then run into each other at Petey's funeral. We also learn that Selvig, aka Cobell, has removed Petey's severance chip prior to his cremation. Back at the office, Cobell orders a wellness check on Mark S. and watches in on the session. During this session, Mark is given clay, and he sculpts a tree, the same tree that his outer self visited in remembrance of his late wife, Gemma. After many attempts to escape and back and forth threats between her and her outie, Helly finally resorts to stealing an extension cord and hanging herself in the elevator. 3 days pass, and Helly returns to the office with scars on her neck. Cobell has placed Helly under Miss Casey's observation.
If you're upset, you can request
A hug. I know.
Mark S. has been reading Rickon's book, which is chock full of anti-establishment talking points.
Your job needs you, not the other way around.
Mark sneaks Helly out of MDR and tells her that he's been recreating the map that they found on the back of the old staff photo that sat on Petey's desk. Helly agrees to help Mark add to the map, and on their hallway adventures they find a department with baby goats.
You can't take them yet, they're not ready.
Bert confesses to Irving and Dylan that he lied about the size of his department. Bert reveals that he lied because he wasn't sure he could trust them, echoing the same sentiments that Dylan had warned about earlier in the season.
That was before O&D started disemboweling people's bowels.
It becomes clear that these rumors of gruesome battles between the departments are all fabricated by the higher-ups to keep the departments from intermingling and to fear one another. Cobell is informed by Grainer that he has found the former employee responsible for Petey's unsevering, Ragabi.
She cracked reintegration. I'll find her.
Meanwhile, following recent events, Mark suggests that the department begin to work together to unveil Lumen's secrets, unknowingly mirroring the investigative doings of his outie, who has also become suspicious of Lumen. Milchick realizes that his copy of Rickon's book has gone missing, and he awakens Dylan's Innie at home to ask where it's hidden. While Innie Dylan is awake in his closet and being interrogated by Milchick, he meets his son.
Daddy.
Devin, who has given birth to her first child, runs into a woman named Gabby that she met at a birthing lodge. But Gabby doesn't recognize her because she underwent the severance procedure so she wouldn't have to experience childbirth. Cobell, under her Mrs. Selvig persona, becomes close with Devin after becoming her lactation consultant. Yet another one of Cobell's many schemes to keep a close eye on Mark outside of the office. Mark is out on a date with a woman named Alexa, who is actually Devin's midwife. They attend a concert where Petey's daughter is playing. Later, Mark decides to finally answer the many calls to Petey's phone. Calls from Ragabi.
Is this Mark Scout?
Mark goes to meet with them where they are ambushed by Grainer. So Ragabi kills Grainer and then gives Grainer's access card to Mark, instructing him to bring it to work. Milchick arrives in the MDR office and announces that Helly is being rewarded with a music dance experience.
I choose Defiant Jazz.
Now during this dance party, Dylan finally snaps and attacks Milchick.
The music dance experience is officially canceled.
Dylan then tells his colleagues about how Milchick woke him up on the outside and that he met his son. Upon learning this information, Mark and Helly go to the security office and learn how to operate what's called the overtime contingency.
I think it's time for a field trip.
Irving has once again traveled to O&D where he stumbles across a retirement party for Bert. Irving calls out the fact that this is essentially the death of Bert's Innie.
You're all just gonna stand here and let him die?
He then gives Milchick a piece of his mind.
You smug mother...
And then comes the twist. We learn that Mark's late wife Gemma is none other than Miss Casey. Miss Cobell had kept Helly's suicide attempt a secret from the board, and for this, she has been suspended. Helly hits 100% data refinement, and the MDR team has officially met their quota for the quarter.
I love you.
Meaning that one of them will get to have a waffle party.
Yeah, and if he doesn't see me finish, I might get passed over for Refiner of the Quarter and miss out on my goddamn waffle party.
Mark chose Dylan, who had agreed to sneak into the security office after hours and wake up the others when they're on the outside. And during this planning meeting, we get this great line from Irving.
Let's burn this place to the ground.
On the way out before their big mission, unsure if they'll ever wake up again, Helly kisses Mark S.
In case we don't come back. I don't know, in case we do.
Dylan attends his creepy waffle party, but leaves early and successfully wakes up the others on the outside. On the outside, we see Mark attending a reading party for Rickon's book. There he tells Mrs. Selvig that he's planning to quit Lumen.
I was gonna tell her that I'm
Thinking I might quit.
We then see Mark's Innie wake up at the reading party face to face with who he recognizes as Miss Cobell. He even slips up and calls her by this name.
Thanks, Miss Cobell.
Irving wakes up standing before his eerie elevator paintings, the same elevator from Lumen that we saw Miss Casey sent to for testing. Irving gets in his Audi's car and tracks down Bert. Helly wakes up at the Lumen Gala where it's revealed that her Audi is actually part of the Egan family.
Forgive me for the harm I have caused this world.
Helly was created as a piece of advertising to prove that the severance procedure was safe and to reassure the public that innies are happy.
Use the line about how you see your innie as your sister.
Back at the party, Mark S. gets in a room alone with his sister and reveals that he's her brother's innie. Devin fills Mark S. in on the death of Gemma and learns that Mrs. Selvig works at Lumen. Cobell rushes to the gala to stop Helly, but Helly takes the stage and reveals to the crowd that innies are not happy.
We're not happy. We're miserable.
Back at the reading party, Mark S. finds a picture of himself and Gemma, or as he knows her, Miss Casey. Milchick rushes to the security office to stop Dylan. When he breaks in and tackles Dylan, the overtime contingency is suspended. But just before slipping away, Mark S. exclaims loudly and clearly, "She's alive!" Severance Season 2 continues the story of Mark S., Helly, and the gang in their war with Lumen and uncovering their dark secrets. Now, we'll be covering this season here on the channel, giving you weekly breakdowns of every episode, so make sure you subscribe for more. And let me know if you have any other questions about Severance Season 1 down in the comments. And big shout out to Colton Ogburn, the writer of this video. You can find his social links below. Or you can talk to both of us on our free-to-join Discord server. The links for that are also below. And if it's your first time here, please subscribe and smash that bell for alerts. For ScreenCrush, I'm Ryan Airy.